I'm going to do a demonstration here for you on the WeiXu method, copying a two-dimensional drawing using his method. All right. So this technique is it's a really good one. It's a really good one to learn, and it's actually quite similar to the negative space chair idea because we're looking at shapes and spaces all the time. Yeah, so A3 is the best, I think. Just gives you enough space. Now you won't need a ruler for this. You can use one if you want, but I don't really recommend it. I think it's better to do these drawings without a ruler sometimes. Even though you can see straight lines, I think it's a better habit to practice to just use your eyes. I'll show you what I mean. Just sharpening my pencil. All right, so the idea is simply that, like the negative space chair drawings, we're going to try to use our pencil and our page to kind of help us copy the shapes. So remember, what we're copying is the drawing itself, but to help you get started, I've drawn these lines because they're the lines that we can use to help us create our boundary shapes. Okay. I'm going to be using words like boundary. You can think of that like a fence. You know, these are, fences. A fence for the drawing to live inside. Little fences, and then inside that there are some details. There's a little fence or a boundary or a shape. All right, so a fence is just a shape, or a boundary is just a shape. And, if you were a builder making a fence, you would try to make the fence accurate. You would try to build it in a certain position, perhaps, so that you had a nice, good use of your space. So we're going to try to be accurate with our shapes, our fences, our boundaries. And that's all we're doing. We're looking at this and we're going, okay, well, I can sort of see maybe there's a big shape like this to begin with. Right, and then I can build these other lines, etc. I'm just doing it really quickly right now, just to show you, that's roughly those lines, just really quickly. And let's drop this down a bit. And now that they're there, I could start to add other shapes, right? To help me find the position of all these parts of the body. You see? All right, I'm just doing it really quickly to try to show you sort of thing. So this is how you build it up. Okay, so we're just using boundaries or shapes, and we're going to be checking those shapes with our pencil, because the pencil is sometimes a really good tool. We can even just look at them and just compare them. So to do that, it is important, if you do have a printout, it's really good because you can put it flat. If you don't have a printout, just try to position yourself. For example, if my computer was there, that'd be good because it's right in front, and I can look there, and then I can look down. Right? That's good. But it's a bit maybe hard if the computer's on a funny angle, like over there. The other option would be to put your image onto a little iPad or something, if you've got one. Even on your phone, that might help, if the screen's big enough. And then you can look at the image, right? But it's probably good to put this flat. Don't have it, you know, on an angle like that. Because if it's not on an angle like that, it's going to be harder to compare your shapes. Because as soon as I take that and tilt it, it changes shape. So if there's a drawing on here, then it's going to change shape, right, when it's on a different angle. So when you're copying something and when you're using a method that involves shapes, like the WeiXu method, you want to try to keep everything on the same angle. Or maybe straight in front like that. Boom, boom. All right, let's do it. So I'm going to put mine over here, and I'll start with a fairly wide view so you can really see what I'm doing. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep my reference image, right, along the edge of my table, and I'm going to make sure that my paper is vertical. So then I've got an advantage. So now I know that the shape here, right, the top edge of the paper and that angle, I can sort of reference with the horizontal of my page. Okay, so I'm going to start with a very light, look how I'm holding my pencil, very light line. I'm just trying to match that angle here. And I can even do this now, sort of look at it like that. Okay, mine's a little bit flat, tilt it down more. See that? So that's a bit better. Oh, I've left my eraser somewhere. Sorry, let me just get my eraser. And it's really important to draw lightly. This is where you should not use your ruler. If you use a ruler now and the line is in the wrong position, which it will be, it'll be hard to rub it out. So do not use a ruler, please. No rulers. So you'll see in a minute I'll be changing these lines, but for the moment I'm putting them in lightly. I'm going to try to draw this one. Okay, and I'm just now going to look at this shape. See this shape here made by the edge of the page? Right, I can look at that, and I think mine is too far this way. Let's check the angle. Oh no, it's pretty good. It's pretty good actually. So I'll leave that for now. Now I'm going to draw this one here. Okay, now this is where I'm going to move this a bit because running out of space. Let me put it over there. That's better. So I want to try to match that angle, okay? But where do I put it? See, where on the page do I put it? Well, I'm just going to guess first. I'm going to guess about here. Now another thing I can look at is, if you look at this picture, you can see that this is not horizontal. Right, the page itself is horizontal, but the line is tilted up. See that? A little bit up. So the page here, my page, right? See, that's wrong. My line, it's too flat. It needs to go up. Let's try there. So there, right, tilt it up. Okay, so that angle's pretty good. This is what I mean, right? It's much easier for me to compare that angle to this angle because they're both flat. If I'm looking at a computer screen, it's going to be harder. You can still do it, right? You can still compare, right? You could just look at this shape, right? And compare it maybe to the angle made by the line in the bottom of your page, which is down here. It's possible to do it. Now, for the moment, I'm going to take that line as my line. Okay, now I'm going to do this outside edge line here. Now notice it's not vertical, right? The edge of the page is vertical. This is tilted in a little bit at the top and not so much at the bottom. So it's not vertical, it's tilted in a bit. So what I have to do is try to find the shape, right? I'm looking for this shape on here. So if the angle's correct, let's say that's correct, but where is it? Where is the position? Is it here? Is it here? Is it here? Is it here? So what I'm looking at now is this shape, and I'm trying to make it the same as that shape. And I reckon it's about there. So I'll start with it being about here. What I'm actually going to have to do is lift this up because I can't, because of my camera setup, I can't draw the other way. So I'm turning my page to help me. Okay, so there's my little line. Now I'm comparing the. Now, don't trace this. If you traced this drawing, you're not going to be learning anything. You will learn nothing. So please do not trace it. You are looking at copying lines, angles, and shapes, and you are going to try to make them as good as possible. So here we have a shape. Boom, 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 boom. And there's a shape here. Now, it looks reasonably good to me. I'm pretty happy with it. So now I'm going to show you how you can check it. To check it, let's make this a bit clearer. To check it, we can draw another diagonal line from, say, this corner through this corner. In other words, I could imagine another line, right, that's going all the way through there, and I could put that onto my drawing. Do you understand what I'm doing? I'll draw it on here so it's, you can see it, but I'm actually sort of imagining it. So I'm imagining another line here now because I want to check this shape. And if this angle, if a line of this angle on this drawing goes through both corners of my sketch, then it's good. So put this over here. Okay, I'm getting everything sort of lined up. Going to try now to match that angle. Now look how different it is. It's really quite different. Yeah, it's really quite different. So I think mine's too fat. My shape is too fat. So if I draw that there, it's going to end up going through about here. So this line or this line are in the wrong position. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just check my other angles. That's about right. That's about right. That's about right. That's about right. So it's the distance between here. It's the position of this line or this line. It's not the angle. So I just need to make one of them closer. So I'll just slide this one along. So we'll try it here. All right, so it's a completely new shape now, isn't it? And now I'm going to compare it. I'm really just trying to compare that shape to this shape. Now it feels too thin at the bottom. Or too long now. I think it's too long. So I brought that in maybe too far. Let me just bring this up a bit now. Okay, let's try that. Boom. Boom. Okay, now that angle now looks good to me. This angle looks good. This angle looks good. This angle, I think that's a bit too vertical. I'm going to make that a little bit more tilted. All right, try that. Yeah, that's better. All right, I'm pretty happy with that. Now, again, this is like the chairs. You want to try to get it accurate if you can, but you don't. It doesn't have to be perfect. So you just, I think always, you're just trying to, you know, work within your limitations and your skills, and you're trying to, in this case, we're trying for accuracy, but it doesn't have to be perfect. So you're just trying your best. So I'm pretty happy with that overall shape for now. Okay, the next thing I'm going to do is put this line in here. So there's a line that's running from the top corner down towards this corner, but it's actually coming in over here, about there. So I think the line's about there, and it intersects with this one. It crosses this one. And then it makes this triangular shape. So it's going to be something like that. I'll turn the page to help me draw it. All right, something like that. Now I'm just looking now at these shapes. I've got this triangle here. I can compare that to this triangle here. And then I've got this strange shape here compared to this one. And I've got this little triangle. So I feel like this is just a little bit too, I want to go over here a little bit more. Just sneak it across a bit. And I'm using very light, it's almost, I'm using the side of my pencil really, so I've got these really light lines that are very easy to rub out. Okay, that looks pretty good. Okay, so I've matched those two shapes now, this one and this one, and I'm pretty happy. Okay, the next one I want to do is maybe this one. And now this is where it really becomes important. If you're happy with the overall proportion of this, which it's important to get it fairly correct if you can, as correct as possible, because all the other lines now are going to be positioned within this. So you want to try to get your boundary shape fairly accurate. Okay, and then what you can do is you can measure. So for example, the position of, let's say, this line here where it crosses, we can measure on the drawing. See how if I put my pencil like that, I'm lining it up there with the top and putting my finger on here where that line comes across. So that distance is, on my pencil, that far. So I've just measured it. Now if I move that up to here, you can see that that is very close to the top. In other words, the halfway point of this drawing is about halfway between those two lines. See that? So if I measure this point, or find the halfway point here, it's going to be a different length. Okay, so about there. Right there is where that line crosses over, because it's a little bit less than halfway. It's probably a little bit low. I'll go up a little bit. All right, so that point is this point on my drawing. And now we're going to put it on a certain angle. So I could use the angle to help me, right? And I could also use the measurement of this side. For example, this point, right, if I measure that, and that's not very useful. So I'm going to use an angle because that's a bit hard. The other option is I could try to measure here, this one. No, I think it's going to be simpler just to notice that this line is on a certain angle, right? There's the horizontal, and the eye line is tilted up a bit. So this is not horizontal, it's tilted up a bit. And another thing to look at, this is useful, is that the eye line is almost the same angle as the collar, this line down here. See how they're almost parallel? So in fact, I could just try to make them parallel. Okay, that's reasonably parallel. All right. And now I can look at these shapes. I can look at this shape, and I can compare it to this shape. And I'm pretty happy. I'm pretty happy. If there was a problem, I could correct it, but at the moment, I'm pretty happy. Okay, now what we can do, we can sort of guess this line, right? It just starts a little bit above, maybe about there. And it runs on a certain angle. And if you look at these distances now between here and here, this line crosses less than halfway. So halfway is about here, and less than halfway is maybe about here. So if I draw a line from here to here, and then I just check it for the shape, I think it's a bit low. I'll go up a little bit. Maybe about there. Now I'm just looking at this shape and comparing it to this shape. See that? And I'm pretty happy. All right, so that's that line. All right, now we've got one more major line to do. Okay, it's this one here. Now again, we've got the intersection point, so we can look at the intersection point at the top. That's the point where it crosses the other line, right? This line intersects this line here. And notice that distance on the reference image is a fair bit less than halfway, right? Halfway is about there, or about there. So halfway is about there, and this is a fair bit less than halfway. So I could look at this and find halfway, and then bring it back to about here. All right, so this line appears to cross about here, and it crosses down here somewhere. So again, I could measure it. This point is about, well, it's more than halfway to this line. Or it's, there we go, it's 1/3 of the whole height. See that? 1, 2, 3. So this point is 1/3 of the height. So on my drawing, I try to find 1/3. That's too big. That's good. So there is my 1/3 line. Check it. Beautiful. So this point and this point are now my next line. And it's, you know, it's pretty much a straight line, right? Just draw it really lightly first, and then just compare it. So again, we've got this shape now to compare, triangular shape. We've got these little triangles here, this oblong shape here, got this shape as well. Now I feel like my line is too far to the right compared to this shape. But also this shape is different. So I'm starting to see some errors here. So what it might be is overall I'm a little too wide. Okay, so look, it's not hard to fix. I could just lift this line up a bit, just a little bit. If I lift that line up a bit, we'll just see if that helps. So again, I'm comparing this shape to here. It's better, but it's still a bit wide. And this one to this one, that's better. This one to this one, that's good. This one to this one, good. This one to this one, pretty good. Not bad, good. Now this looks too wide to me. So I feel like this line's a little bit wrong. I'm going to make this line a little bit more to the left. Just a little bit. Okay. Good. All right. So now I'm making a decision. Am I happy with everything? Okay. And I'm pretty happy. Again, it doesn't have to be perfect. I think this is going to be a reasonably accurate boundary shape to work within. And overall, I'm willing to happy to go ahead. Okay, so that's that. So now we can start to add more lines. So what you can do, you can look at your drawing and you can look for other strong lines. This is a strong line. This is a fairly strong line. There's this shape here. There's a strong line here for the jaw. There's a triangular shape here, right? So there's a number of other lines we can build. Let's start with this nose line, because I think that's a strong line. See there? You can imagine a line going down there. See that? And in fact, if that continues on, it sort of goes up towards that corner. It's almost going through that point. See that? So what we can do is a line from here down, crossing over here somewhere, and pointing up to about here. Okay, so it's about there, there, and about here. So I'll just turn my page to help me. Again, don't use the ruler. It's going to be, if you make a mistake, you're going to have heavy lines on your page and it won't look good. So just draw really lightly. Okay, so good. So I've got this triangle to compare. Pretty good. Got this funny shape here. I've got this little triangle here and this shape in here. Got this little triangle here. Great, I'm happy. All right, let's put in this little hat line. I'm just calling it a hat line. See that little triangular shape? Okay, so that's, we can just guess that. That's not so hard. You could perhaps notice that this point is more than a third along, right? So a third is about there. Yeah, so a third is about there. Oh, it's about a third. So I could now measure the third distance here. It's about there. So that could help me. And then I've just got the shape of the triangle to look at. See that little shape? And I've got this angle to look at. So it's about there, I reckon. Maybe a little bit lower. All right. And also notice here where that line goes up and sort of touches here, there's another little shape. So what you're going to find once you get to this stage is it's going to become easier and easier. Okay. So let's now look at this angle, sort of the top of the hat. The top of the hat now this does not have to be super accurate, so I'm just going to do a sort of a curvy line or a line like that just to start to notice where those shapes are. Okay, and then here, right, there's a sort of a triangular shape here, isn't there? And then here, there's a little, starting here, going down, we could do a little, almost a straight line shape. See this little brow popping out here where his eye is? Just use some simple lines to help you. Now look at his cheek here sticking out, right? The cheek line comes down and touches about here, but it starts sort of popping out about here. So I'm just adding a few more lines here because they're quite easy to do. The edge of the hat line, okay, the hat fur starts here and it sort of pops up through there. So I could do something like that. And then the fur comes down to here. And it pops just across the top. All right, pretty good. Now, got the nose line there. Let's bring in let's do the collar, actually. No, let's do the chin. The chin's an important point. So if you look at the reference drawing here, and we imagine a line sort of where the chin starts, it's making a little shape here, isn't it? All right, and if we go all the way through there, it's touching here. So that's probably a good line. This is this point here. So the chin is down here somewhere, and there's an angle about there. Okay, and I can see that this line's a little bit wide here, but so it's going to mean my chin's going to be a little bit wide. Okay, so it's not perfect, but it's okay. So there's my little line here. Okay, and that's meeting up with this nose line. See that? Good. Okay, now what about the bottom of the nose? Let's give ourselves a little line here for the bottom of the nose. Maybe about there. And we could even perhaps find the mouth line as well. So that bottom of the nose line, right, there's another triangle now. Also, it's about halfway. Look at that. No, it's less than halfway. So if we guess it, oh, the other thing is, look, it's above this point here. It's above that point. So there's that point. The nose is above that somewhere. Okay. The angle of the line of the nose is about like that. And then the shape of the triangle is similar. That's pretty good. And the distance is less than halfway. In fact, I'm too long. I've made mine too long. So the one nose brings us to about there. Yeah, so I'm too long. So I'm going to lift this up. Okay. So I hope you're following what I'm doing with the measuring. The measuring is a really important part of this. 2. It's just less than a third. 1, 2. Still a bit high, actually. So I'm going to go up a little bit more. All right. So there's my little nose triangle. Looks pretty good. And here's my sort of mouth, the muzzle of my face shape. This is the muzzle shape. Okay, that's pretty good too. So I think I'll leave that for now. I'm going to now add more details to the collar. Okay, so conveniently we've got this point here where the collar touches the cheek, and it's below the intersection. So here's the intersection. Below the intersection, the collar starts about here. And look, this doesn't have to be accurate because it's just a little shape like that. Okay, something like that. Comes across. Excuse me. Okay, so now look into this oblong shape here. You've got this little shirt shape. Again, just put in some light lines that are roughly correct. Excuse me. And I've got all these other guidelines now to help me. Excuse me. See, looking at my reference image here, this shape touches this line, makes this shape over here, right? So I could do a little angle there. And then this, well, it's a bit more complex. So we'll start down here. We'll get this shape right. It's about like that. And then from here, just next to this line, there's a little line that goes up about like that. Okay, so what I could do, I think I need this jawline. See this jawline here? I think I need a line for that. Oh, and look at that. It crosses through here and through here. See that? So it crosses through here and here. So I can simply turn my page and draw a straight line between here and here. Now let me check where it crosses here. Does it go right through there? It almost does. Yeah, it's going almost through that point as well. So that's good enough. So that is my jawline. Okay. So the jawline, right, if you follow the jawline along, it sort of joins up with the collar over here somewhere. But let's draw this shape, because this shape's quite easy. So in the corner here, we've got a little triangle. See that? Sort of like a triangle. And then it comes down about there. And then across about there. And then there's this funny little shape. And then there's this part of the ear. Is something like that. And then the jaw starts here. Okay, and about there is the collar. See this collar? Now I've got this triangle to look at. So get roughly the angle there, and then over here you've got roughly this angle. And then about here it comes almost vertical. So this is a little bit different. And that's okay, we'll just change it. It's just a collar, so it doesn't have to be accurate. The facial features will matter more than the clothing. Alright, so then that comes down there. And then below, this is the jawline. This line here is this one. Remember that one? It's about there actually. So in here we've got these shapes now. So we've got this line curving down. Now this is a curve, a gentle curve. This comes down, maybe not that far. And this sort of comes across to here. So this line swoops up, this line swoops up, and then it sort of comes over there. And I feel like that's too high, so I'll just drop that one down. So you've got all these different shapes now that are helping you. It's quite a clever method if you take the time to build that boundary shape and try to get it fairly accurate. Oh, now there's a nice bit of music coming on. Alright, so we've got the chin. Okay, so let's get a little bit of detail here for the chin. Right, it actually comes up inside that line, pops out here, goes up through that intersection point, up there. Now the chin cuts across like that a little bit, it's a bit rounded, and then here it splits off. There's sort of a bit of fabric or something. So this little bit of fabric you can see from this shape here. And I'm quite happy to draw straight lines for the most part because they're a simplified version of a curve. Straight lines. Alright, now in here, again, we've got these shapes to guide us. Okay. Now, what I could do here is just, so it's a bit easier to see, I'm just going to randomly add some of this fur because it doesn't have to be accurate. And even if you look at his fur lines, they're quite, you know, they're done quite roughly. So you don't have to worry about them being accurate. It's just fur. Try to get the direction right, but all right, it's looking pretty good. I feel like mine overall is a bit fat. I don't know if you can see that, and maybe it looks different from the angle of the camera, but it looks like I'm a bit wide overall, but that's okay. Okay, now, how are we going? Good, thanks. That's all pretty good down there. So what I need now is a few more lines. The eyes are the hardest part of this drawing. So we want to try to build those guidelines carefully. And, you might get a bit confused. So just try to go easy. What we could do is build maybe a line for the brow first, and maybe a line for the this part of the eye perhaps. So we could build some of these other shapes. So firstly, let's have a look. Here is this point. So in this area is our eye. Now this doesn't look quite right. I'm going to change that, move that over to there. That gives me a little bit more space for the eye. That looks a bit better. So my brow line is somewhere up here. No, that's incorrect. Sorry. Just going to draw a line. So I'm just adjusting my lines a little bit because I want the eyes to be accurate if I can. So I'm just sort of looking into these spaces and noticing small changes, and I'm just adjusting. That brow line is probably more like that. Okay, and then about here, let's start on this side now. So I'm going to build this curvy shape, okay? I'm going to start here, take it up, cross. I'm trying to use fairly simple lines, not details yet really. I'm almost using straight lines. I'm going to add a little bit more detail for the nose line here. Now there's a sort of a triangular line here, or shape. See, that's helping me position that eye there. Okay, so I'll just leave the detail for later. I'm going to leave that amount of detail because I want to check that I'm doing this pretty well. Eyes are really important in drawings of people. They're probably the hardest thing, I think. Okay, now these distances are a little bit confusing, so you might want to measure it. If we look at the distance from that side of the eye, it's 1, 2, 3. It's almost, that distance is almost 3 of these. 1, 2, 3. See that? 1, 2, 3. So from there to there, that line is about 3. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so mine's a little bit wrong. So I'll just bring that back there a bit. Try again. 1, 1, 2, 3. That's better. So if I take that now as my measure, then the first third is the corner of that bit. And the second third see, I hope you can see what I'm doing, everyone. Yeah, so I've now just positioned this point and this point. See these two little points? So this point is the start of the eye, the corner of the eye, and this is the end of, is that point of the eye there. So again, trying to use these fairly simple lines. Okay, so that little shape there might be my little eye shape. There's the top of my brow line. See how I'm building these shapes that are similar to his shapes. Now I can add this cheek line here, this wrinkle, because I've kind of got all the other information. Okay, so the nose now comes down, bridge of the nose. This shape here gives me the nostril. Okay, and there's a line up here as well. Now I could look at the halfway point between the nose and the mouth, and it's a bit above halfway, so the mouth starts about here. See that? Okay, and then we've got this line sort of coming down the bottom of the mouth. So again, just using the shapes All right, now the only thing left to do is the eye, the hardest thing, but I think the proportion's pretty good. Now this one's a little bit in the wrong position, I can see now. So I'm just going to move his little eyeball, his iris, back in this direction. Now this is where now I'm really starting to shift to a little bit of detail, because the exact position of the pupil is important in a drawing, so because it helps us see where the person's looking, and it gives human emotion, or it shows emotion. All right, so that's pretty good. So I'm just continually comparing my reference image with my drawing. Good. All right, now let me just check the time. Oh, we better stop. Let's have a break, and after the break I'll finish off the line work for you, which I can do quite confidently now, and then I'll demonstrate the three-dimensional object example as well. All right, so we'll see you. Let's take a 15-minute break. Okay, so basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to add the line work now. I won't add all the line work, I'll just show you my approach to adding the line work, because I want to spend about 45 minutes on the 3D object. So here we go. That's recording, and that's recording. Good. Got my coffee, all is well. Put some music on. Okay. Good, so details. I'm now going to push quite heavily on my drawing, and I'll zoom in a bit so you can see, and I'll bring this a bit closer. And I'm now sitting in a little different position. I'm sort of leaning on my board because I want to get, and I'm holding my pencil like this now, whereas I think before, for the most part, I was holding it sort of like that, kind of at a distance, but now I'm coming right up close because I want to get good line work. Okay, so you know, it's fun now. It's really just fun. Again, the fur doesn't really matter that much, so don't worry about it too much. You want to try to get some of the quality of line that he's got. I'm actually taking this out because if there's too much paper, it's too soft. You want it to be a little bit hard. And I like to hold my finger kind of on my reference drawing if it's right nearby, like this. Just allows me to see a bit more detail. Not lose my place, you know. But you can see this hair, right? That can be sort of anything you want, really. You know, it's just the feeling of the fur, really. I do need one more of these. Just so I don't get my drawing dirty, I'll sit this over here. This is a good technique to, you know, keep your drawing a little bit cleaner. Okay, now this part here, the hat, it's just a nice, lovely kind of wobbly. I'm using the side of my pencil a little bit so it's thicker. But you know, it doesn't have to be super accurate. What you want to try, obviously, put your efforts more, your accuracy efforts in the facial features, because the facial features are more important really than the position of the fur or the scarf, you know. So just sort of enjoy the process of adding these lines, but don't be too worried about it, you know. Okay. And this now is a little bit similar to the Picasso quality of line drawing, where we're trying to get some of that lovely quality of line. Alright, but you can see that most of these lines are pretty you know, they're not that important. So just get a nice quality there and roughly the right direction. And it'll be good. You can even turn your paper if that helps. Again, holding my finger. I'm pushing quite heavily, you know, to get some of this. Great. All right, now I'm going to go into the eyes. So you can see that's going to be fine, right? All of that stuff. You just want to get a nice strength in your line work. So the eyes. I think I'll start with the pupil. So Dinan, just do your best here. Just do as best you can. Sometimes changing the way we're sitting to draw something can really help. It does for me anyway. And look, you know, I think your enjoyment of the process is as important. So just trying to get yourself to a point where you can enjoy yourself, you know? I mean, I've just got a cup of coffee here and it's getting a bit cold, so I put the heater on. You know, got my favorite radio program going. And I think that really, really helps me to draw. You know, life's too short. You want to enjoy yourself, even when we're working, if possible. And creativity is pleasurable. Being creative should feel good. So and you can sort of, you know, some of these lines are quite soft. Some of them are drawn fairly fluidly. Some of them are really heavy and wobbly and there's even a sort of feels like there's a little bit of tone in there. I'm just going to add a little bit of that, just so it makes it look a bit more. Okay, now over here, now I'm using an 8B pencil, by the way, just so you know. And I'm really, really pushing hard to get that strong, expressive line. And the way Van Gogh's drawn his pupils, his own pupils here, they're not exactly symmetrical. One appears to be looking at a slightly different angle, which is interesting. It's quite a heavy line there. All right, so yeah, you should be able to see and feel the differences in his line quality. So just try to bring some of that into your drawing. Now I'm interested to see what this looks like in the camera, because from my angle where I'm sitting, it looks a bit wide, a bit fat. So it, you know, it makes a difference, the angle that you draw, that you're looking at something from. Okay, I've done his mouth a bit wide here, so I'll just make that a little bit smaller. All right, so that's about it. I'll just quickly finish it off because all the rest is not very important, so you know, it doesn't really matter. You know, I'm really confident now because of my using the WeiXu method. All these lines are going, I know, roughly in the right position, so I'm free to enjoy the kind of quality of the line, not so much the position. All right, now the beauty of the method is if you've done it the way I've suggested, and if you've worked quite lightly, then now you can get your kneadable rubber, if you've got one. You can use a normal rubber for this as well, but the kneadables are a bit better. You can really erase soft lines quite easily with one of these. And get rid of all of your guidelines. Just be careful when you are erasing on your heavier lines. You don't want to lift them off. But you can get quite a lot of that out of the way. And if you go too far, you can come back. Okay, that's about it. So you should be able to see the advantage of the method. It's really good. It does take a fair bit of time, but the results are really good. And after you've practiced it a few times, it's the sort of thing that you would use just a little bit here to check your drawings, you know. So now that I've done that, just go back in and just make that a bit darker. I feel like I stuffed up this eye a bit here, but quite like how this is a bit darker through there. I'll just add. And this line I missed. Alright, so, you know, that's it. I reckon we're done. But yeah, I can see mine's a bit wide, I think. But there you go, that's our Van Gogh sketch, or Van Gogh self-portrait sketch, copied using the WeiXu method. Alright, I hope you enjoyed that. So I'm going to put this aside now, and we'll go straight into the next one. So for this one, I'm going to get my little man here. Now obviously I'm not going to have time to finish the whole thing in the next 45 minutes. Well, it's only half an hour. So I'll just show you the differences. The difference in this working from a three-dimensional object. And it's actually got to do with your eyes. It's all about your eyes. So what happens is, when we look at something in real life that's three-dimensional, because our eyes because they're separated by a certain distance, then when we look at something, if I'm here looking at something, let's say it's a cat, this eye will see everything from one position, but this eye will see everything from a slightly different position. So this eye will look through there, and when this eye looks at that same ear, it's seeing it from a slightly different angle. Now, if you don't believe me, just hold your hand up in front of your face. Hold your hand quite close to your face, maybe this far from your face, and then close your left eye and look at it with just with your right eye. And then close your right eye and look at it with just your left eye. And you should notice that it changes position. You can even hold your hand on its side like that, close to your nose. And if I touch my thumb on my nose and close my left eye, I can see this side of my hand. And if I close my right eye, I can see this side of my hand. So one eye can see a completely different side of my hand. All right, so that's what happens when we're looking at a three-dimensional object. Okay, when we're looking at a two-dimensional object, it's not quite the same. If I'm looking at a drawing of a cat, then, you know, the position of the chin of the cat in relation to the body of the cat doesn't change. So when I look at the cat, the objects, you know, the relationship of one part of the object to the other part doesn't change here, but it does change here. So the WeiXu method works for both 2D and 3D, but for the 3D, there's a good trick you can use. That is to close one eye when you're looking at your reference. Close one eye. If you close one eye when you're looking at your reference, it's actually going to sort of flatten the view to one eye. In other words, you could take the second eye out of the equation. Right? If you're only looking at everything from one eye, then nothing's going to move, is it? It's all going to be the same. So when you're looking at your object here, I want you to be closing one of your eyes. Okay, so you want to find an object around the house. Must be three-dimensional. It can be simple. It could be, you know, I don't know, a toy or something, or you know, pair of sunglasses. There's a number of different things. It's probably best not to use a geometric object, because then that becomes much more about perspective. So try to pick something that's not geometric. You know, it could even be a rock or a couple of rocks. Okay. And the idea is to follow the same technique, but in this case we're looking at a three-dimensional object. So I'm going to sit it over here. I'm going to put a light on it. So my point of view is I can look at it now. And the idea is I don't want that to move. And what I'm going to do is sort of imagine that when I'm looking at my object, I'm going to kind of imagine a horizontal. So you can't really see what I'm doing, right? I'm looking over here, and I'm sort of imagining where the horizontal is, and I'm imagining where the vertical is. because it's not on a piece of paper. It's just standing there. So I need to look at it and find my vertical and find my horizontal. And you won't be able to see that on camera because I don't have a camera in my head. But that's what I'm doing. So I'm looking over and I'm going to start by sort of trying to create a boundary shape, an outside shape. So I'm looking firstly okay, let's say the top's about here. Then a boundary shape about there will take me to that hand. About here will take me to that hand. About there will take me to that foot. And then I've got this sort of edge of the table which comes through there and goes out there. Okay, so that's roughly my boundary shape. Make that a bit steeper. Now what I'm doing here is I'm looking at my reference object, right? It's over there. I'm looking at it. I'm holding my pencil, finding a certain angle, right? I'm closing my one eye, I'm closing my left eye, and by closing my left eye, I'm simplifying the elements. And then I'm grabbing that angle and I'm kind of bringing it to my paper. So it's a slightly different, it's a bit harder to do than before, but I think that's pretty good, that line. So I'm closing my eye, closing one eye, finding the angle, and then sort of bringing that angle to here because I know that, oh, that was my battery. Sorry. Let me just undo that. Okay. Zoom in, check your focus. Okay. Yes, so I'm looking, right? Holding one eye, closing one eye. I'm looking for the vertical and I'm finding the angle from my object. And then I bring that angle there back to here. See? And it allows me to check. All right, so vertical and that angle, vertical, that angle, vertical, that angle. So this is wrong. This is too far across there. Vertical, that angle, vertical, that angle, vertical, that angle. Yep, so it's almost about there. And then that angle there, vertical, that angle, vertical, that angle. It's about there. So you can see my first lines were right, not correct. That's a bit better. Now the table angle, vertical there, vertical there, vertical there. That's a bit, it's not bad. It's about there. Okay, so now what else have we got? We've got, roughly speaking, I'll just now quickly, this is a bit different because in my case, I've got quite a complex object. So I just want to position roughly some of these shapes. So I'm doing this a little bit differently to before. But it's a similar idea. I'm just doing it you'll see what I'm doing in a second. So above there. But look, notice I'm drawing quite lightly. And I'm closing my eye as I look, closing one eye. And I've got these angles to look at, you see? Now this is the edge of a board here. It's kind of a ellipse shape here. Okay, now shoulders. The angle of the shoulders is just up off about there. Horizontal, angle of shoulders, horizontal, angle of shoulders, horizontal, angle of shoulders. That's pretty good. Now, what else can I measure? Angle from elbow to elbow. Okay, so from elbow to elbow, horizontal, vertical. Horizontal angle. Horizontal angle. It's about there. And it's very similar. It's a bit flatter than the shoulder one. And it goes through the bottom of the chest rib cage, about there. That gives me the bottom of the rib cage. So we've got these kind of elbows. Okay, so I'm going to move fairly fast now. This is actually closer in. And we've got this shape here. So I'm using a version of his method, right? I've done the boundary shape. I'm using angles to find key points. I'm looking at these shapes, these negative shapes. I've got this angle here now, the bottom of that part, which touches just above there. That line's almost vertical. That one's tilted. And then this is an ellipse. Needs to be longer. Drop that down. Goes behind. So I'm working really lightly. I'm almost using the side of my pencil for these lines because it makes much softer line. And that means I'm going to end up with, you know, the lines are going to be easier to erase when I make mistakes, because I will always make mistakes. Now this is going backwards, so that's getting a little bit thinner because of perspective, yeah? Okay, this comes in here. I've got these negative spaces to look at. Little ball. Shapes. Angles. Closing one eye. Okay, so now we've got this point here. Got a little ball here. Now that's too long. So we'll drop that down. So there's something wrong I see. Yeah, so that's needs to be a little bit smaller, and then this needs to be thinner. Maybe about there. No, that's too high too. Yeah, so this is now a combination of the chair negative space and the WeiXu method, really. Keep closing one eye though. That's really going to help. It's going to help you position the objects in relation to each other. Angles, shapes, closing one eye. So if you work soft and light, you can just keep sort of checking. You know, this is too large, I can see now. My overall shape for the chest cage, the rib cage is a bit big. So I'm just going to just make it a little bit smaller. And it's quite easy to do because I haven't pushed too heavily yet. And I'm tilt it a little bit more over that way. And then here I want to pop this circle out there. And then that clips down to there. So I'm just adjusting, I'm correcting my mistakes now. And it's easy to do it when you've been pushing lightly. Something's wrong, it's too short. So I'll just bring this down. Again, I'm closing one eye when I check my angles and shapes, and that really helps me to see. That's better. Okay, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. This is a bit, on my drawing, this is a bit too wide. And it's because this is too far over. I'll just tilt that in a bit more. So that means I can shave that back a bit. That's better. Okay, good. Okay, so I've got about 10 minutes left, so I'll get a fair way through the marking out of the shapes for this one. I'll probably get most of the shapes marked in roughly, which is good. Check my angles. Okay, now I haven't done this arm yet. It pops out there to about here. So can you see how my hand was in the right position, really? And that guideline was helped me find the elbow. Good. Okay, so now a few more details. This has got a corner on it. There's a straight line going up from here down to right to there. So I'm going to turn my paper for that. Again, so it's easier. This is a straight line. I don't really need these guidelines anymore because they're all pretty, my position's pretty good now. start to clean it up a bit. Okay, sharpen my pencil. Just stand back and have a bit of a look. I'm quite happy with it actually. I won't be able to show you. I might take a photo actually, so that I can show you in the photo what it looks like from where I'm looking. So I'm looking from about there, I suppose. This lens is a bit wide, but it's about there. Let's try that. So it's going to be really hard to see because the screen's not very bright, but can you see? That's what I'm looking at. Slightly different angle, but you know, it's pretty close. Okay, and it's easier to look at a photo, isn't it? But I don't want you to do that. I want you to be looking at your object. Okay, so keep going now. I'm just going to add a little bit more detail here. Get my shapes right. Lost my music. I'll just get that back on. Just realized my computer makes a lot of noise. The fans. Anyway. Just trying to get some music going. Okay, so here we go. Closing one eye. Checking. Working with the side of my pencil. Because it gives me smoother, more flowing lines. When you're drawing things like this where there's a circle or a sphere that's hidden by parts of another object, you should draw the whole thing. I tend to draw the whole shape, like the ellipse or the circle, and then I sort of cut away the bits that I don't want, because it helps me get a nicer shape. See this circle, if I draw it all first as a circle, it helps me get that shape nice there. And then I can just cut away the other bits. And here, cut away this bit. circle. Okay, now this is quite a snug, it overlaps a bit more there. And it's quite all right, so look, I think we must be close to time. A couple of minutes left. Does anyone have any questions before I finish up? So your three-dimensional object doesn't have to be as complicated as this one. I just like to challenge myself. You can pick something simpler for yours.
Can we use tones in these drawings?
Like a ruler? Did you say tools?
No, can we use tones?
Oh, tone, yes you can. Yes you can. Absolutely. Please go ahead. This is now a new look. This is something new now, and yes, even though we haven't started talking about tone, you're very welcome to use it. Yes, please. Who was that? Was that Kristen or Shushu?
Anne, sir.
Oh, Anne. I'm sorry, Anne. Yes, please go ahead. So what you might do, in my case, you might start to sort of just roughly indicate where the tones fall, like this. And that can really help you build them. But again, the side of your pencil is the best for tone. Yeah, go ahead, Anne, that'd be great. All right, so that's roughly it for the day, guys. That's the WeiXu method, doing a three-dimensional object, and the WeiXu method doing a two-dimensional object. So now, please, everyone, I'd like you all to... I just realised that if I put my display to sleep, it doesn't make such a big noise. Okay, good. I'll remember that. Good luck finishing yours off, okay? And please post your example drawings to discussions when you're ready, okay? But please do it before class on Tuesday, okay? Now, a reminder that next week, because Tuesday is a holiday, we're going to be having... I'm going to be pre-recording the demonstration for you, and I'll just make it available for you on Tuesday. So you can just come and, sort of play back the pre-recording of the tutorial, okay? And you'll be able to look at that plus the module page. And that's what we're doing next week is tone, just as Anne was talking about. We're starting with tone next week. All right? Any questions? Alrighty then. Well, thank you very much for your time today. I hope you've learnt something. Both the methods we've done this week are really, really useful. They're really valuable. So practice them and look back at the recording or look back at the module pages to remind you of what the idea is. But I'm sure you'll find your skills will improve with these two techniques.